In 1877, America's most wanted fugitive fled to these hills in southern Saskatchewan. Lakota Sioux Chief Sitting Bull was seeking sanctuary for his people, and he got it from a most unlikely source. The massacre at Little Bighorn is perhaps the most famous in history. In 1876, General George Custer attacked a Sioux village in southern Montana. But Chief Sitting Bull and his warriors were waiting. They routed the American cavalry, killing every soldier. Sitting Bull had watched as the U.S. government exterminated his people. He fought back the only way he knew how, and became the most famous and most feared Indian in North America. After Little Bighorn, he had no choice but to gather his people and flee across the border, or medicine line, hoping to find a home in Canada.
Sitting Bull knew that there were going to be more soldiers coming after him, even if he wanted to battle. So he decided to come to Canada. Yeah, she was a medicine woman, he said.
Leonard and Lawrence Lethbridge are cousins, descendants of Sitting Bull's people. Stories of the legendary chief have been passed down from generation to generation.
He was a medicine man, so they kind of all look up to medicine men.
He could predict the future, and then they respected him for that.
The Canadian government was unhappy with the presence of 5,000 Sioux. They were worried about violence and feared an international incident. Ottawa assigned Major James Walsh of the Northwest Mounted Police to keep an eye on the refugees. Walsh, with a handful of men, rode to Wood Mountain to meet the famous chief.
He told Sitting Bull that if he's going to stay in this country, he has to obey the Queen's laws, and he'd be safe, and Major Walsh would make sure that the cavalry won't come across the border and attack.
It was the beginning of a close friendship. The chief admired the Mountie's honesty and looked to him for advice and protection. Walsh, in turn, sensed the warriors' fighting days were over, that he just wanted peace for his people. Walsh even moved his headquarters to Wood Mountain to be closer to Sitting Bull.
They had a rapport towards each other because Sitting Bull was a good judge of individuals, and then he knew that Walsh spoke with straight eyes. He was truthful, and Sitting Bull could figure him out, and he trusted him. He relied on his word, and he usually kept his word.
As the buffalo were hunted to extinction by whites and Indians alike, hunger became the biggest enemy of the Sioux.
The start was not too bad. There was still some game left, but eventually had all gone, and they were starving to death. They had to eat their horses at the end before they went back to the States.
Hundreds began slipping back over the border to the U.S. Walsh tried to help those who remained, supplying rations when he could. He even petitioned the government to set aside reserve land for the Sioux. But Ottawa refused to help the starving Indians.
Sitting Bull was pretty inspirational and quite motivated, and people will follow him. And the Canadian government didn't like a charismatic person like that, especially an Indian. So they want to get rid of him before he causes any trouble.
Ottawa wanted the Sioux out and decided Walsh was the problem. He was getting too close to Sitting Bull and his people. He was transferred to Fort Qu'Appelle. Walsh ignored the order as long as he could, but was eventually forced to leave. It would be the last time the two friends saw each other. After 4 years in Canada, Sitting Bull had no choice but to take his starving people back across the border. He returned to face American authorities in 1881. Walsh was powerless to help. Upset and disillusioned over how his old friend had been treated, he eventually resigned from the force. Sitting Bull tried to settle into a quiet life on the Standing Rock Reservation, but he was killed resisting arrest in 1890. To the Sioux, both Sitting Bull and Major James Walsh are still heroes, proof that whites and Indians could live side by side.
Both sides have to trust each other and respect each other. Have to respect people's property on both sides and be truthful.
Not all of the Sioux returned to the United States with Sitting Bull. Some of the refugees remained behind and were eventually granted the same status as Canadian Indians. They finally got the reserve, the home that Sitting Bull had come looking for here in Canada. I'm Bill Waiser.